Hello and welcome to Conversations with Dr. Greer. This is Dr. Stephen Greer of SeriousDisclosure.com, and I'd like to thank the folks at the World Puja Network for hosting us here every 2 weeks to bring you an update on our projects and activities and all the information that we're gathering on disclosure, UFOs, extraterrestrial intelligence, and new energy. And as many of you know, we have a really historic film coming out on April 22nd, Earth Day, is the premiere in Los Angeles of Sirius, like the star system, SIRIUS. And to find out more about that, you can go to SeriousDisclosure.com. That's SIRIUS Disclosure.com. And what you'll find there is now an ability for everyone to get involved as distributors of the film. And this film has become the largest documentary that's been funded through crowdfunding from the public in history. And it's going to have an amazing amount of information about UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligence, contact, and also new energy systems. That really is the reason for the secrecy. And I'm excited today to introduce to the listeners of this show Lee Waterworth, who is the president of YECRA, which is a really innovative company based in Los Angeles that has developed a new media technology so that when an independent film like this comes out, everyone can become a distributor and become part of it and become empowered through it. And so, Lee, I would like to thank you for being here on the show with me today.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's great to be here, and we're really, really excited to be part of the Sirius release.
Right. Well, you know, it's funny because a few months ago, I guess you were at Sundance at Film Festival, some of your folks, and I was making a presentation, and we didn't get to connect, but we got to meet, I guess, a couple of months ago in Los Angeles, and I was really impressed with what you guys have developed, and I know that many of the listeners were part of the movie and had seen the movie Thrive, and I mean, this was a really groundbreaking event for how you were able to create a platform so that anyone with a smartphone or a hook to the internet could view this worldwide and also become a distributor in a sense. What you call an affiliate is the kind of lingo YECRA uses. And I think it's really an interesting concept because it's a brilliant way around the stranglehold that mainstream distribution companies and big media outfits and corporations have had on really conscious films about alternative reality and about controversial subjects that normally are blacklisted and can't make their way out through the mainstream media and distribution networks. So it's a really exciting new media model that is very empowering to the social media and new media paradigms that we're living in today. So I don't know if you could talk to folks a little bit about, you know, what it is, how you developed this and how it works and how people can get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be delighted to. You know, it all started with Foster and Kimberly, actually, over at Thrive. I'd worked in the distribution business for about the past 5 years before I met Foster and Kimberly. And I really saw a lot of problems within the industry that were inherent and that seemed as though they weren't about to go away. The first major one is that 95% of all films do not get a distribution deal, which really I thought was a travesty. And then, you know, I worked in a distributor, and I saw how a distribution company works and how they're trying to stay in business. And I worked on a documentary, a feature-length documentary called Fuel, which was about the world's addiction to oil.
Right.
And while there, you know, what was really interesting for me was we spent a ton of money on trying to drive people to theaters. We had, you know, Richard Branson turn out for a press event on Good Morning America. We had Josh on Good Morning America. We had Josh on Larry King. We had full pages in the New York Times. We had TV spots running all over the shop. and we just couldn't break through the noise. We couldn't get people into the theater, and yet we'd spent all of this money, and it was a really awesome film. It was a subject that people really cared about. It was a subject that lit up the internet in terms of conversation and discussion. But trying to get people into a traditional, four-wall theater was really, really difficult, and unfortunately it was a big learning experience for the filmmakers who pushed it out, and it was a real waste because, the people who really wanted to see the movie online couldn't find a way to do it in a timely fashion. And so, and I also worked for a while, just given a brief history in a company called Trans-Pacific Media, which was a international distributors rep. So we repped 13 of the biggest international distributors in the world, and we were buying films like Slumdog Millionaire and Twilight and 3:10 to Yuma. And the big kind of takeaway from that was that it really is an old boys club in terms of, when you get to a certain level, people will only deal with people on that level, and there are reasons for it, and it just unfortunately places a stranglehold, as you said earlier, on projects that might be really great, that can't find a way into the mainstream media, which is, of course, controlled by the same ultimate people anyway. So, the big concern for Foster and Kimbley was applying that knowledge of the traditional industry and combining it with knowledge of the new media, the social media space, and coming up with a distribution solution that allowed them to retain their own rights, to control their own windows, to control their own price points, and that would allow them to actually pivot with the release in the same way that a new technology company would pivot if they find that something's not working. Because traditionally, you sign away your rights to the movie and then it's over to that person to control it. So YECRA, the system that we developed for Thrive, fundamentally from the top down, we do not license rights. We work with producers, we work with filmmakers, but we don't license the rights for them because we realize that, the people that we choose to work with are very passionate about the subject and they need to be able to adapt to the landscape.
And this becomes really key, if I can interject something here, because the listeners, if you go to our website, SeriousDisclosure.com, and you'll see that we're loading up a lot of evidence, and one of the areas is in the government document domain, and this is actually going to be a little part of the film Sirius that's coming out. And as I mentioned, the premiere is on Earth Day in Los Angeles on April 22nd, and that's the day that everyone in the world can see it video on demand through your system. But one of the things that's in there is a document from the CIA that was from 1991 during the first Bush presidency that described that the CIA had people in every major distribution, news agency, wire service, network, newspaper, magazine, I'm quoting, to alter, change, or stop stories at their whim. And now what's interesting about this document is that it was accidentally declassified. I got it, and then it got reclassified. But we've put it out there. And what people need to understand is that, and this is something I've always struggled with mainstream publicists who don't understand how the world works. Here's chapters 1 through 10 of how the world works. It's corrupt. And this corrupting influence of the intelligence community and the military-industrial complex is profound. And when this document is not a conspiracy theory, it's in black and white, and it's authenticated, and it's there for anyone who knows how to read the King's English to read. Now, the implications of this are profound, and here's one of them. I had a man who is a very big producer and director in the movie business in Hollywood a few years ago, who wanted to do a feature film about all of this and about the story of disclosure. And this is a man who's generated literally billions of dollars in sales over the years. And he flew me out there, and we met, and he had writers who had been on all kinds of big films there. And a couple weeks later, he called me back. He says, they're not going to let me make this film. And wow. He was with one of the major studios, and he had a $60 million discretionary budget to make any film he want, quote unquote. Well, someone came in from corporate and from the intelligence community and killed it. And then a few years later, I was meeting with a man who I don't want to name, but also is a very big director in Hollywood. I mean, huge. And he had some writers there who had done the screenplay for A Born Identity and some of the other big films, and we met for several days in Los Angeles. This is in the last 4 years or so. Uh-huh. And he told me a story that he had been working on a project, and what you're describing, Lee, is exactly what happened. Someone bought the film, and after it was not the film he wanted to do with me, but another film. They were $10 million into it already. They bought it, but because it had something in there that one of these special interests, let's call them, did not want out, they black-shelved it and killed it, even though they purchased it for $10 million. And it was just in development. And it never saw the light of day. So when this guy wanted to put together something to make this film that we're doing now, he also got approached by a guy who's a CIA and then a man who had been the head of the Department of Energy. And that deal went up in flames. And then to add one more story, I know these are a bit apocryphal. I'm going through them quickly, but there was a man who was the executive producer of ABC News who had been Mike Wallace's guy at 60 Minutes at CBS prior to that and had won an Emmy. And he wanted to do a big story on disclosure with many of these. We have 110 top-secret military and corporate and intelligence witnesses on videotape, most of which the world has never seen. And he wanted to do a very big special on 2020 and Primetime Live, because at that time he was executive producer at ABC News. And he said, look, I can definitely do this. I control these. I said, I don't think they're going to let you do this, Ira. And he says, oh, yes. Then he came out to the house here, my home in Virginia in the country, out here in the mountains of the Blue Ridge, and we met for an entire day with his team, and I gave him 35 digital hours of interviews and several hundred pages of top-secret documents. And off he went back to New York. 2 weeks later, he calls me up. He says, well, Dr. Greer, they won't let me do this story. I said, Ira, who are they? And he said, Dr. Greer, you know who they are. And that was the last I ever heard. Now, he and I stay in touch. He's back at 60 Minutes now, but at CBS. But these stories are important just so people begin to connect the dots of why we've done this film the way we have. Crowdfunded, it's been done for and by the people. The distribution is going to be for and by the people. And I said this a year ago almost to this day when I was giving a lecture out in Phoenix to about 1,500 people. And I said, we're conceiving of this. We haven't launched it yet. We're going to try to do it. But I turned to everyone in that audience, and I said, I want each of you, we need to figure out a way where each of you will be the distributor of this film. Now, I didn't even know that YECRA existed, and I didn't know a man named Lee Waterworth. I didn't even know this was possible, but I felt it was. And so I said this. I kind of went out on a limb, and I said, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it. And lo and behold, some months later, you and I meet. So here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Wow. Yeah, I think people are starting to wake up to the fact that that these things get shelved in terms of patents, and I think that people just don't even think that it's possible for this kind of stuff to happen in terms of entertainment, right? Because it's the TV. Who's going to stop stuff coming through the TV? But what they don't really realize yet, and obviously a lot of people do, and I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this radio show particularly understand this, is that it's just the public version of events.
Sure.
And it's filling people's heads full of drivel. It's reality TV shows, watching people go out and drink and party, and that's taking up people's time, turning them into zombies, and actually drawing their attention away from the stuff that really matters and that's really going to change their lives and that they're really going to want to talk about and they're really going to get involved with.
Right, and now what the beauty of the difference between now and 12 years ago when we had the Disclosure Project event at the National Press Club, which was picked up briefly by all the world's media and then it was ordered down by these corrupting influences, is that, and then of course 9/11 happened 4 months later, but I think that, and that's another discussion that I don't want to go into right now, but the point is this is now a different era because we didn't have video on demand. We didn't have smartphones and iPads, and the Internet developed to where people can click a button and view a film like this and hook it up into their den and their home, and have some friends over and see it. So this stranglehold that the media has had is no more. I mean, even Newsweek isn't printing anymore and has had to go online. So I think that this is really exciting as a new model for the new media that you guys have, and I just think it's amazing. But I don't know if you want